So we're out on a job site, not feeling good today, kind of sick, and I just feel like, Jesus, I feel like throwing myself out the window. But I don't know. We're gonna try and get some shit done anyway, and we're gonna be putting up shiplap on a guy's ceiling. I've never done it before. The guy who trained me how to do everything has never done it before, and he kind of just said, "Figure it out." So we'll figure it out, and hopefully we'll learn some things without making too big of a mess, and we'll get to it. So here I am using a stud finder on the ceiling. Got kind of lucky. The shiplap's going along the short span, so all of my studs are perpendicular. So I've got three good studs all the way across. I'm going through all these extra efforts because you can't feel when you hit a stud with a nail gun. So I just wanted to make double sure they were all where I thought they were. Took a drill bit with a 16th inch drill just to make double sure, because sometimes stud finders will lie to you. So this should be pretty easy. I've got trim going on the side, so I've actually got 3/4 on each side of leeway as far as being short. I'm probably going to cut everything about 1/4 inch short. So I've got an 1/8 on each side. That way I don't have to worry about the sort of round over that's usually in the edge of the drywall. The first few boards will be pretty simple. It's just, 90 degrees on each side. I'm just going to cut, 5 inches off the edge, get rid of that sort of any factory blemishes. These boards are kind of rough anyway, so yeah, we'll just go from there. So I just cut that first one, kind of put it up a couple pieces down to make sure I could just cut them all the same size. Kind of hard to measure in the middle of the ceiling, so if you just put a piece up, you can kind of use it in place of a tape measure. With these ones, I actually didn't have the right size hole saw, and the customer didn't need that electrical outlet cut out that day, so I just covered that one up, marked where the center was going to be, and covered that one up. Things got a little bit trickier when I got to this register. Cut the boards to size, and then marked where they needed to be and measured how deep it needed to be. For that air register, I need to cut a notch out of this wood almost all the way through it. So I'm going to cut these with a handsaw, and then I'll do a drop cut. Do a drop cut with a circular saw on the other two. So instead of trying to measure off of this weird notch, I'm going to start my drop cut on the top side. You gotta be really careful when you're doing a drop cut or anything with a circular saw, really, because the tendency for kickback's really bad. When you're moving forward, it's usually pretty okay, but if you're ever trying to kind of back up into the edge of your cut, you gotta be real careful of catching, both for safety purposes, and if this catches and it runs along your material, you can have a bunch of saw blade marks in there, and nobody wants that. So now I've got my mark here. Oh, fuck. I cut into the wrong side. Okay, that's fine. I might be able to use this for the other side of the register. And I'll just go get another piece and cut it and transfer these marks. So I caught myself before making another big mistake. I was going to mirror them face to face, but then my cut would be offset because the register's out in the middle. So I'm just going to copy straight, put a piggyback. Now we're going to start it all over again. So you also got to be careful when restarting a cut in the middle. You saw I just kicked back right there. That was a rookie mistake. So it helps if you brace against it.
So that's chipping out really bad. I'm not going to do that.
So that's because tear out's typically worse when you're cutting cross grain. Cutting with a handsaw and making sure the teeth are facing into the material can help this.
I gotta somehow hold this whole thing up. Looks like it'll be alright. So I'm also going to use a rasp, and I'm going to kind of grind away some of this material. The drywall around that register is real messy. So it looks like I'll be able to reuse this piece. Just going to notch it out on the other side, and I'll just have to wipe all my pencil marks out. But basically the same thing. I'm not so good at that motion. So you got to be really careful anytime you're using a handsaw. If you get started in the wrong direction, that's the direction you're going. So if you start to notice that you're going off course, back up a little bit and then go real soft, trying to push the opposite direction until you're straight again.
So it's actually surprisingly easy to nail these up. You know, I thought the overhead thing was going to be difficult, but tack it in the middle, and then, you know, you got the other two sides.
Got enough scraps now that I can at least make an outfeed. So I don't know if I already mentioned it. I don't really like gang cutting. Gang cutting is anytime you cut more than one piece at a time. But this stuff's real rough sawn, and I'm feeling lazy today. So I guess I should say you don't want to gang cut normally because it adds a slight element of danger. If they're not lined up, you can get some kickback. And then also it just introduces extra opportunities for inaccuracy. So I kind of hosed myself. I got to notch out for that sprinkler right there. Bring my hole saw, forgot to bring my Forstner bits. So all I have is a spade bit that's the same exact size. Just gonna have to get a little redneck about it. I'll start with a spade bit, and then if it's very unlikely that it'll fit, then I've got a rough round rasp and then a round file. So that fire sprinkler also has a couple of little square tabs off it, and I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'll take a rasp or a file and kind of notch into those, because it doesn't extend all the way through the wood, but if I don't notch out the back of it, I'm not going to be able to sink this flat against the wall. So I ended up, this was a little tight over here, and I got mixed up and I notched it out too far on this side, and I've got just enough that I should have one extra board to fill this space. So I'm going to recut this one, because otherwise, I mean, it doesn't look terrible from the ground, but otherwise I'd have to caulk it and repaint it, and I'd rather not.
Trying a new method for notching out the back of that board. Can't necessarily say I'd recommend it, although it did work pretty quickly. I definitely recommend using golf balls as file handles, though. That's super handy. Just hammering in all the old nails. So as far as how I've been attaching these, push hard against it here to make sure there's no gap in between them. Nail, nail. And as far as what I'm using to nail, normally I only work with compressed air nail guns. I'm just used to them. They're more reliable than battery operated, but for whatever reason all of our compressed air nail guns are 1.5 inch max, and 5/8 inch material plus 1/2 inch of drywall, and suddenly you've only got maybe 1/2 inch of nail into the stud. And you know, I'm real apprehensive about anything that's going to be hanging above people's heads falling down. So luckily I've got this battery operated Ryobi. It's an 18 gauge nailer, and it goes up to 2 inches. So it got more like 1 inch going into the studs, which I feel better about. One thing I did briefly consider doing is switching and doing the 18 gauge nails in here, where they're going to be completely hidden by the next board covers them up, and then just pin nailing with like one of these 23 gauge compressed air pin nailers. But
I don't really like, once again, just since it's above people's heads, I don't really like those small nails for that purpose. And then also, I don't want to be switching between nail guns. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. I got bronchitis. Hope the homeowner's still gone. He's going to hear me talking in memes over here. So, last piece.
This would be another situation to be very careful about kickback. If that blade, even though it's not sticking out far, hits you, you'd be having a bad day. So since those trim pieces that go up around the sides are a little bit thicker, I decided to switch to the 16 gauge because it can go up to 2.5 inches thick. Just because that trim's like the last protection from something falling down, really.
So you just want to make sure you count up and see how much material you got, how much room you have for mistakes. I was given the exact right amount, basically. Actually, it might not even be enough. We'll see. But in any case, I definitely don't have extra. I'm going to cut the two front and back, the shorter pieces, just so I have something. The longer pieces are going to have to be spliced. The longer walls are going to have to be spliced. So I want to be able to just shove it into the corner, and I want that other piece to be there because I'm not going to be able to be in that corner when I start nailing it, just because I'm working alone today. As a rule of thumb, I'm breaking one of the biggest rules. If you're cutting out trim, you always cut your longest pieces first, but that's why I'm not doing that right now. You almost always want to cut a little bit oversized so you can put it up and make sure it fits. If you cut a little bit oversized, you just cut a little more off. If you cut undersized, so these are the longer pieces. I'm just going to cut off as little as possible because it looks like it's going to be real tight. So I don't know if you can see that. We got some goofy shit here. I don't know if that's gonna. So it's gonna make it close, but I've at least got enough extra that I can cut off this little hockey stick.
So now I start nailing up that trim that's going around the shiplap just to sort of seal in those edges so you can't see. It's really hard to get something on a ceiling to get that all perfect. So this is basically just scribe trim to, give it a more finished look. With the splices, I decided to keep the open part of the splice further towards that door, so it would hopefully be in the shadow. I didn't want it in the bright light of that window, so I tried to kind of get it in that corner. Same thing with the other side. You always just want to be careful. You want your splices to be in the least visible spot.
Bring. So things ended up turning out okay. Got all that shiplap up, kind of tucked in. Just have to come back with some, I don't know, some dark paintable caulk and fill in all the nail holes and, I don't know, finish things up. But I don't know, job's done for today. Okay. Have a good day, bye. I figured since I'd already used it all day, I might as well find out how many nails I can shoot on one battery charge with this 18 gauge Ryobi. And so after putting up that whole shiplap, I stopped at 500. I'm sure it would go farther. This isn't a perfect test, but this is like a hard 5/8 inch plywood. But even when I was nailing it into the MDF, it was still sinking them. So I don't know, it's at least 500.